I bought these pair of AirPods Pro a month ago right after its release because I love my first pair of AirPods and the idea of noise cancellation sounds like a great addition to an already great product. But more importantly, I wanted to talk about one interesting observation of mine, that in the first week of AirPods Pro's release, in just 5 days, Apple's stock has risen over 5 to 6% to $1.14 trillion, which means AirPods Pro has created over $60 billion of wealth for Apple's shareholders on paper. To give you guys some perspective, $60 billion is equivalent to 1 Uber, 2 Spotifys, 3 Snapchats, 6 WeWorks, and 30 Fitbits. But at the time, I wasn't convinced. I couldn't base my conclusion on just 5 days of data, so I decided to give it some time and see if my conclusions are right. Today, I'm going to show you the video I made a month ago on 7th November, and let's see what has changed. First of all, to be clear, AirPods Pro itself did not create $60 billion worth of wealth in 5 days. It is the symbolic meaning behind that convinced investors of the prospects of Apple. What is the prospect? It is simple and straightforward. Apple's core strength does not only come from its ability to sell iPhones, the brand itself sells. For the longest time, Apple has relied heavily on its iPhone sales to generate enormous profits every year. In 2015, out of a revenue of $234 billion, 66% was from iPhones. This is due to the high popularity of iPhones as well as its huge profit margin. But ever since 2016, smartphone competitions from the Chinese brands as well as the lack of innovation from the industry has fueled the decline of iPhones. We can see a steady decrease in Apple's iPhone sales in the past few years. In the latest quarterly report, iPhone's revenue percentage has already dropped to around 51%, and the strong demand for AirPods has fueled this trend. AirPods were introduced 3 years ago, and we all remember how much it was mocked then. Despite that, AirPods sales slowly crept up from 16 million in 2017 to an estimated 50 million this year. The recent release of AirPods Pro has also shown concrete evidence of its sales going through the roof. In just 5 days, AirPods has almost doubled its search interests. Right now, AirPods search volume is 2 times its peak in 2018 before Christmas. Google assigned an 100-to-56 ratio to the demand of AirPods after AirPods Pro's release. And let us be reminded that we're not sure if this 100 is the peak of AirPods Pro's demand. It possibly will increase even further during the festive season of December when everyone buys AirPods Pro for their loved ones, similar to the 2018 trend. Here is a chart of AirPods search demand over the years. If we assume the search volume of AirPods were 10 in 2016 when it's first launched, 2017 would be 20, 100 for 2018, a 500% increase year over year, and 178 for 2019 so far. The demand of AirPods has increased 18 times since inception. The importance of AirPods is also evident in Apple's financials. In 2015, before AirPods were released, Apple's total revenue for other products was $3 billion. It has now doubled to $6 billion this year following the launch of AirPods Pro, which is not a bad improvement. But as impressive as AirPods Pro to Apple's business is, $6 billion a quarter is still not $60 billion in 5 days. So what has really caused so many investors to buy the Apple stock following the launch of AirPods Pro? The most direct reason, perhaps, is that AirPods Pro really is a great product. It reminded us what Apple brand is about. So many YouTube channels have already reviewed them. I just want to say that after using them for a week, they're comfortable, well-designed, and convenient. For those who can't afford it, get it, it's hassle-free. More important reason for the rise of Apple's stock price, on the other hand, is that this represented another success for Apple's new business model. The transition is almost complete from iPhone-focused to ecosystem-focused. For the longest time, Apple has been struggling to shift its money-making product from iPhones to its services such as Apple Pay and other products such as AirPods. But only until recently did Apple gain some traction and success. The new AirPods Pro has convinced the investors of a new business logic, a new logic based on people's time. Apple, with its iPhones, AirPods Pros, Apple Pay, and softwares will occupy its users' time as much as possible. And for every minute of us using Apple product, it is a minute that Apple could have made money from us, and we grow increasingly reliant on Apple services. This is Apple's ultimate business, banking on our times. Lastly and most importantly, let's look at Apple's demographic around the world. 700 million iPhone users alone, with many more millions of Mac, Apple Watch, and iPad users. However, these are not just any users, they're the wealthiest users around the world. Due to the expensive nature of iPhones, it is very likely that if someone could afford an iPhone, he is a member of the middle class in the United States, Europe, China, and Japan. To put this into perspective, these four regions have 70% of the world's wealth in 2019, according to the GDP number from IMF. This means they are the ablest to spend, and therefore Apple can take advantage of this and capture insane profits from every product Apple sells to them, hardware or software. In the case of today's video, we're talking about AirPods Pro, but other services such as Apple Pay could potentially bring even more profits in the future, making Apple a truly cross-industry empire. The basic conclusion of that video has 3 points: that Apple is shifting its strategy from iPhone-focused to ecosystem-focused, that AirPods Pro is going to have even stronger demand during the festive seasons, and Apple's strategy has great promise because of its existing 700 million relatively wealthy users. Now, that was the video I made a month ago, and since then, Apple's stock price has basically stabilized to $1.15 trillion, $70 billion increase from its original price before AirPods Pro were released. Google's search trend for AirPods also shows strong promise, beating its own record during the festive seasons of Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Numbers came out from Apple suppliers is also showing great promise. Luxshare Precision, one of Apple's key manufacturers based in China, is reporting that Apple is doubling its production order from 1 million units to 2 million units. Now, I've talked about AirPods' estimation to be 50 million units in 2019, but the latest number is pointing towards an even higher estimation of 60 to 65 million units in 2019, thanks to the great demand for AirPods Pro. Everything I've talked about in that video has came true, but I'm not surprised. What I am surprised, however, is how swiftly Apple has made this transition to have a much healthier combination of revenue streams in just a little bit more than 4 years. Thanks so much for watching. Follow me at Lay Creatives. I'll see you next time. By the way, the single most important financial decision made for Apple is by Mr. Donald Trump and his tax cuts, which has dropped Apple's tax rates from 26% to 16%. Let me know in the comment down below. What do you think of that? I'll see you next time.